to Australia because TPP is delayed. But beyond the specific market access issues, there's something bigger at stake: American leadership. Over the last 70 years, the U.S. created, shaped, and led the open, rules-based trading system. It's not too much to say that whatever good in that system has happened with U.S. leadership. Look back one generation. During the Reagan, Bush, and Clinton administrations, it was U.S. leadership that set down the global rules that today help America's inventors and entertainment industry earn $125 billion each year, nearly 40% of all IP royalty and licensing payments. Rules that provide the foundation of fair and transparent sanitary and phytosanitary standards that underpin more than $130 billion a year in agricultural exports. Rules that prevent other countries from raising their tariffs so that we can export $1.3 trillion a year of airplanes, pharmaceuticals, automobiles, medical equipment, textiles, and other manufactured products. More recently, it was U.S. leadership that helped navigate the WTO supertanker with its 160-plus captains off the sandbar that was the Doha round and onto a more productive course of pragmatic multilateralism. That led to the conclusion of the Trade Facilitation Agreement that has the potential to add $1 trillion to the global economy. It led to the conclusion of the Information Technology Agreement, eliminating tariffs on $1 trillion of high-tech exports. And it led toward an environmental goods agreement, a trade and services agreement, and a fish subsidies agreement. And of course, it was U.S. leadership that forged a consensus among nearly 40% of the global economy on the highest labor, environmental, IPR, state-owned enterprise, and digital economy standards in history. But moving ahead, our capacity to deliver on these initiatives turns on our ability to build support among the American public. And that brings me back to the debate here in the United States. As the last 18 months demonstrate, there's a high degree of economic anxiety that has affected political support for trade. This anxiety reflects real and legitimate concerns. While wages have ticked up in the last 2 years, and while we've seen the greatest decline in poverty in almost 50 years, this follows decades of wage stagnation and widening income inequality. Now, any competent economist will tell you that technology has had a much greater impact on jobs and wages than trade. Some estimate that more than 80% of job loss comes from technology alone. But no candidate runs on the platform of doing away with computers, imposing a tax on your software, or withdrawing from the cloud. We don't get to vote on the next generation of technology. We don't even get to vote on globalization, which is the function of a number of factors, including the containerization of shipping, the spread of broadband. But we do get to vote on trade agreements, so they become the vessel into which Americans pour their legitimate economic anxieties, the scapegoat for bigger forces and historical trends. The fact is that trade agreements are how we shape globalization and ensure that its benefits are broadly shared. And the historical record on that looks pretty good, notwithstanding the rhetoric that is commonly passed around as fact. When the critics of open trade cite trade deficits as the litmus test, we need to remind them that to the degree that trade deficits matter, we run a trade surplus with our FTA partners as a whole. Our major deficits are with countries with whom we don't have FTAs. But the critics of trade are onto something. We do not do a particularly good job as a government or as a country in helping individuals and communities adversely affected by change, whether that change comes from technology, migration, or globalization. Indeed, if you talk to our technology community, you know that what we're experiencing is just the tip of the iceberg. I mentioned 3 examples. First, what does 3D printing mean for the average manufacturing process? You can print a product anywhere, anytime. Do you need factories in the traditional sense of it? Second, one of the top jobs for American men who have a high school education is as a truck driver. Last year, we saw the first autonomous truck deliver a load of beer from Fort Collins to Colorado Springs. What are the economic, social, and yes, political implications in 5, 10, 20 years of autonomous trucks potentially displacing millions of truck drivers? And then, of course, there's artificial intelligence, whose implications for the future of work as we know it are only beginning to be imagined. All we know, though, is that AI could disrupt huge swaths of the American workforce. Blue and white collar, manufacturing, services, and knowledge-based jobs. Of course, one type of job is made redundant, new types of jobs are created, but for the displaced workers, their families, and their communities, that transition can be uneven and difficult, and the skill level required for new jobs is likely to exceed that of the old ones. How are we helping those affected by change? How are we preparing future generations for a rapidly changing economy? Yes, we've got trade adjustment assistance and some other modest programs, but if we're honest with each other, we have to admit that they are necessary but insufficient to the task. And certainly one silver lining of this election campaign is that there is now an increasing chorus among Republicans, not just Democrats, arguing that we need to do more for workers and communities adversely affected by change. The good news is we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's experience and lifelong learning, demand-driven training, community college access, and apprenticeships to draw from. There are ideas about wage insurance and relocation systems to dig into. Thoughtful people like Senator Mark Warner are delving into the future of work in America with ideas on portability of insurance benefits, modernization of the social safety net, incentives for businesses to invest more in training and skills development in an era of multiple job shifts and career changes. A number of these ideas have been proposed in President Obama's budgets. Maybe now they'll see action. And of course, the ACA made a very, very important contribution to the portability of health insurance. We can draw lessons from state programs that have earned high marks, such as New Hampshire Works, which matches potential employees with private businesses for on-the-job training, or from Maine, where the Thornton Academy and Pratt & Whitney partner to give students concurrent high school degrees and certification in tooling industries that qualify them for high-tech manufacturing work on aircraft parts. We can learn from our trading partners. In Singapore, they've got the Skills Future program, which provides continuing education to workers at every stage of life and helps direct workers in declining employment industries to growth areas for skilled jobs. Australia uses a competitive system of employment services firms and nonprofits to move dislocated workers into new jobs, with Yelp-style ratings and financial incentives for the most successful placement services. In Germany, of course, they've mastered the art of the apprentices. And in Scandinavia, unions play a key role in moving their members from one job to the next throughout their careers. The challenge is not for the federal government alone, but for governments at all levels, the business community, high schools and colleges, unions, and civil society. We're going to need to tackle this challenge if we're to rebuild the social compact in an age of rapid technology change. But it will also be relevant to making Americans feel more secure and confident in the global economy. And that brings me to my last observation, the importance of public engagement about trade and what's at stake for each and every American. We in this room all know that increased exports mean more and better jobs with higher wages. We all know that the U.S. is already an open economy, but that our businesses and the workers they employ face significant barriers and unfair practices abroad. We all know that we can't maintain a strong middle class and reaffirm the American dream if we isolate ourselves, selling our products to just 5% of global consumers. But it's not enough that we know these things to be true. Gone are the days when a handful of trade associations could chip in a few dollars, hire a few consultants in the months leading up to a specific vote, and get trade done. As we saw in TPP, the vote will never come unless the groundwork is laid in advance. And if the ground is allowed to be poisoned by half-truths at best, it's very difficult to recover. Back when people actually got paychecks in the mail, one company inserted a note that said something like, 40% of this company's revenues come from exports. 40% of your paycheck comes from exports. We need trade agreements to open markets for our exports. Companies need to do more to talk to their workers about how much they have to gain from open markets and higher standards. And we all should help families appreciate just how strongly their living standards and often their employers' competitiveness depends on open markets. I remember meeting with a labor council for a member of Congress in the Midwest. And all the participants there, representatives of all the unions, had their sheet of talking points from their national offices with their reasons to oppose TPP. They went through their points and then they gave me a chance to respond. And I went through what was actually in TPP. And I remember one union member speaking up saying, If what you're saying is true, clearly assuming it wasn't, we should be supporting TPP, not opposing it. Of course, everything I said was true and was ultimately available online for anyone to check. And I tell that story because I think it's one lesson in the last 18 months is that we must do a much better job explaining trade earlier in the process to the broadest possible audience. Employees, suppliers, small businesses, neighbors, local leaders, faith leaders, civil society leaders. When it came to TPP, governors and mayors got it. So did virtually the entire agricultural, manufacturing, and service sectors. Creative and innovative industries dependent on intellectual property rights got it, as did the technology community. In fact, one of the things I'm most proud of is that we insisted on leaving no sector of the economy behind. Both textile producers and the apparel importers supported it. The footwear manufacturers and the footwear importers. Content providers, such as the motion picture industry and the internet companies. And they don't agree on anything. Generals and admirals and national security experts have been among the most supportive. Virtually every editorial board and columnist endorsed TPP. Indeed, half of President-elect Trump's cabinet appointees did as well. But we collectively need to do more to convey the importance of trade broadly, not just around a specific vote or even a single agreement. I have zero doubt that we have the facts on our side, but it's easy to blame trade, foreign trade, for all of our ills, even though in our hearts we know that not to be true. In fact, the opposite is true. We need to make it clear that disrupting trades means cell phones will be available only to the wealthy, not for the single mother working 2 jobs and using her cell phone to FaceTime with her kids during her break. We need to make clear that disrupting trade means working class Americans paying more for the basics of life: food, clothing, shoes. Tariffs are among the most regressive taxes. They disproportionately affect working class Americans, not the wealthy. Increasing tariffs on imports means increasing costs on those who can least afford it. We need to make clear that much of what we take for granted in the United States, in terms of fair rules, the free flow of information, transparency and regulation, are actually under threat by other countries who do not necessarily share our interests and our values. We need an all-out, long-term public engagement effort, not unlike the ones that made the public aware of the importance of recycling or of the health effects of smoking. Not one that oversells the benefits of trade, but that situates trade in the context of a broader set of domestic policies designed to ensure that the benefits of trade are broadly shared and that those affected by change will have a path towards success. And that's where all of you, the trade community, can play a vital role. As Tom Friedman and Walter Russell Mead have noted, the Russians have a phrase that it's easier to turn an aquarium into fish soup than fish soup into an aquarium. It's much easier to tear down than to build. But in the absence of forward movement by us, the rest of the world moves on, and we're left behind. Failure to lead, retreat, is a decision, one with dire consequences. I'm proud of what we've accomplished together and of the foundation we've laid for the future. The incoming administration will have a number of critical decisions to make. Decisions that will affect, first and foremost, the well-being of Americans, but also the health of the global economy as a whole. Trade is not a panacea for the world's problems, but it certainly isn't the cause of them either. We don't do trade for trade's sake. We do trade because trade done right is a powerful tool for improving the lives of people across the United States and around the world. I saw that when I visited Jet Incorporated in Cleveland. Jet's 32 employees make wastewater treatment systems and export them to 33 countries. And its CEO, Ron Swinko, told us that he's looking forward to trade agreements to simplify standards and eliminate tariffs on its products. I saw it when I visited the Concord Supply Company in San Antonio. It makes a solution that reduces environmental damage of oil spills. Its CEO, Victor Quinones, told me that exports account for 90% of their sales. And the more you can sell abroad, the more you can hire at home. And I saw it in Omaha, where I met with the Kimberly family, who told me that 1 out of 3 rows of soybeans are destined for export. 20% of farm incomes are dependent on export. And finally, I saw it in Rwanda when I spoke to women who are making it possible for their children to go to school by making Kate Spade bags that you can buy at City Center a few blocks from here. I've had the opportunity to meet many of these people in person over the last 8 years, and each story is an inspiration. It's people like these who remind me why we do what we do. To support those who are working to earn a decent living, to create jobs, and to strengthen their communities. Their journey is the journey of America. Proud, strong, and yes, great. It's been an honor to serve, to make some small contribution, and to join you all on this journey. I look forward to seeing where and how this journey takes us from here. Thank you very much.